We're looking at airspace classifications, operating requirements, and flight restrictions. First, we're going to do an introduction of the different airspace classifications. So, there are two main types of airspace. Airspace is either regulated or it's non-regulated. And in between this regulated and non-regulated, there's four more categories under that. So you would have controlled, uncontrolled, special use, as well as other. And other could be for like any military operation. The type of airspace, it's dictated by many different things. So aircraft movements, basically if there's a lot of aircraft in a certain area, there could be like warnings put out, and there are. The nature of operations in these areas, so if like a temporary flight restriction or a TFR is enabled, you won't be able to fly in this area at that time. The level of safety required to operate, national and public interest, so if there's like a national security issue, you might not be able to fly in this area or at an area at a certain time. And now let's look at a figure demonstrating the airspace profile. So you have airspace class A, B, C, D, E. We don't have an F, but we do have a G. So using military language, because that's what ATC uses, which is air traffic control, you're going to want to memorize these as class Alpha, class Bravo, class Charlie, class Delta, class Echo, and then class Golf. So just a super brief overview. Class A always starts at 18,000 feet MSL, and MSL is mean sea level. So that means that it is 18,000 feet above sea level. That's where Class A starts. Now, what about Class B? Well, Class B is usually around larger airports. When airplanes come in, they start up pretty high, so that's why this wedding cake, which is typically what they're associated with, an upside down wedding cake. If you look at it, it's like an upside down wedding cake. They're going to come in from the top up here, right? And as they come down lower to land, you can see that they don't need this airspace out here. So it's just going to shrink smaller and smaller, like an upside down wedding cake, until you can actually see the runways, which is this black part right here. Runways are here, 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 and here. So that's Class B. Class C, like Class B, has tiers to it, and these are just for smaller airports, so like medium-sized airports, you can think of it. Class D airspace is basically super small airports. You have Class E airspace, which is where manned aircraft fly. Now, underneath these tiers, you can still fly your drone if you're in Class G airspace. You can think of Class G airspace as good to fly. And that's specifically associated with Class G airspace because Class G airspace is the only airspace where you don't need ATC authorization. So you need ATC authorization to operate in Class A if you're that high, B, C, D, or E. But we'll touch on that more in a second. So operating in Class G, which is Class Golf, it usually, but not always, can go up to 14,500 feet MSL. Now, if you're operating around airports, you can actually still fly around airports, just not in these tiers right here. So you know how there's these little upside down kind of stair parts right here where it's in Class E airspace? Well, if it's deemed Class G airspace, like you can see how it is here, it's a little bit raised. You have 1,200 feet AGL. In Class G airspace, when you're typically around this region, is going to associate with AGL. Whereas Class Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo all associate with MSL, but Class G does AGL. So that's an important distinguisher. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo do MSL, and Class G, when we are looking at it in this general sense, it is associated with AGL. So notice how over here, where it's underneath this tier right here, 1,200 feet above ground level. And then when you come to this lower tier, it's 700 feet AGL. And it's kind of the same here if you look at it with between these tiers right here. If it falls underneath this tier, it's like 700 feet on the outside. But if it's like with this upper part right here, you can go up to 1,200 feet AGL. And you see these lower ones right here where it says non-towered airport with instrument approach here, and then non-towered airport with no instrument approach. This one has more of a, you can think of it as ceiling. You see it's raised more. You don't want to fly above here. You don't want to fly above here either. So that would fall into like an other. So going back to controlled airspace. And controlled airspace is when, if you're flying your drone, you can fly in these airspaces. However, you need to get authorization from ATC, air traffic control, So this is like getting an LANNC, which you don't need to worry about it for the test, but there's websites you can go on and get this to fly in there, and you need these to operate in the area. And think about it like this: you need authorization from ATC everywhere except for the last letter, which is class Golf, good to fly. For class Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, you need ATC permission. But we can omit class Alpha because you're never going to fly your drone 18,000 feet MSL. So Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, you need ATC permission to operate in that area. We're going to keep going through the FAA guidebook. Those videos will be in the description below the like button. It'll be in the playlist too to help you study for your Part 107.